What is up, guys? In today's video, I'm going to be going over several tips that could be losing you games in Fortnite Chapter 6 Season 2. As always, if you guys do enjoy this video, find it helpful, informative, interesting, remember to give it a like, subscribe if you like to see more, and comment down below what you think has been costing you games most in Season 2. And a lot of this is going to be season-specific things, not super general basic Fortnite stuff, but some of those basics could also be costing you games. The first thing I want to say is that some people rely on the bat way too much and use it in situations where it really isn't that good and they end up just getting nothing done. The bat is one of the best items in the game for sure. Like, there's no doubt about that. It's really, really effective. But that doesn't mean it's the best item for every situation imaginable. I'm sure we've all had those people that just kind of run straight at you with the bat over a vast distance that really get nothing done. Or I've had times where, like, I reposition with shockwaves and then the person just keeps chasing me in the with the bat, and I keep tagging them down, and eventually they just end up losing the fight. So going on somebody with no initial damage and just charging at them with the bat is typically not a good play. There is one common situation that we'll kind of get to later on where using the bat on somebody that's full health isn't the worst thing ever. But a lot of times, if you're forcing the bat in a situation where it doesn't really fit, you could be costing yourself games and just making those fights much harder for yourself than they need to be. The next thing is going to be a pretty big shift from last season, and that is going to be fighting the loot island that spawns at 4th zone. So last season, this island was a very big deal because it gave you the medallion, which gave you unlimited sprint and turned you invisible while you sprint. But the medallion you get from Shogun X this season is pretty bad. It makes it to where you get a shield bubble when you heal, and this shield bubble doesn't even last long enough to use an entire big pot. Like, it's a pretty bad medallion, and I don't think having this medallion is worth putting yourself on the map at all. So I think just using that medallion is a mistake, but also fighting Shogun X to get that medallion, I think, is also a mistake that a lot of players don't think about because it was such a high priority last season. They just go for it anyways. And Shogun X does drop the Mythic Hollow Twister AR, which is a good weapon, but with how easy it is to get good loot this season, by the time 4th zone rolls around, you probably already have a purple or gold AR, especially if you've been using the black markets. So going from a gold AR to Mythic, sure, it's nice, but that increase probably isn't worth defeating Shogun X for, and I pretty much never want to go for the island this season. In terms of fighting Shogun X, you might want to go up there and kind of control the island and maybe try to get free eliminations on people that do fight Shogun X. But I feel like feeling rushed to defeat him just to get that Mythic AR, the potential gain isn't worth the risk, in my opinion, and isn't worth the time it takes to eliminate him. So having a high priority on eliminating Shogun X, I think, is definitely a mistake this season. Another thing that I've kind of seen people talk about or comment about is that they're worried way too much about gold. It is very easy to get gold this season. Anytime you open one of the vaults, you can break all of the kind of things in the vault to get more gold. I think each vault is over 1,000 gold. So I feel like you can play this season and play pretty free with your gold and not really worry about it too much. And you'll still have more than enough to spend most of the time, especially if you get the vaults. But even if you don't get the vaults, I feel like gold is very abundant this season. Also, the safes this season that you can open at different POIs have been reworked, and you can just break the floor underneath them to actually get the gold from these safes now. So you don't actually need to go through the process of opening them. You can get it pretty quickly. Even then, I don't care that much about doing that, and I would rather just get the vault gold. And like I said, if you do that somewhat often, every other game or so, then you probably are going to not have to worry about gold ever when playing this season, and you can spend it as much as you want. Which brings us to our next point. Not taking advantage of the black market, I think, is a pretty big mistake this season because you can very consistently get great loot. So the way the black markets work is there's certain items in here that you need to spend dill bits to get. These are the things you get from robbing the vaults, and these reset every game. Gold bars carry over match to match, and you can have up to 5,000, and then you can buy high rarity weapons in these black markets and have them very early on in the game and very consistently. Like just being able to go there and get potentially the mythic pump out of the Crime City one or a high rarity pump out of any of the other black markets, I think is very good, and I would highly suggest taking advantage of these whenever you can. And that was kind of why I was saying you don't need to worry about gold at all. Like some people would say, oh, 600, that's too expensive for one gun. But with how easy it is to get gold back this season, I really would not worry much about spending it at the black markets at all. And even if you are very worried about gold, there are items that you can just use the dill bits for. When it comes to the black markets, though, one mistake that a lot of people might be making is that they just assume it's going to be safe in there when it's not. Every time you go into the black market, just go in assuming there's going to be enemies in there and try to stay alert. And then the same goes with leaving the black market. These are not necessarily very hot locations, but there's locations that a lot of people or some people will be congregating at. So the odds of you encountering somebody in there or encountering somebody when leaving is decently high. If you wanted to be, extra, you could just camp inside and wait for somebody else to spend the gold to buy weapons and then eliminate them. But either way, just go in there with your guard up and assume that there will be people waiting down there for you or trying to catch you leaving. Kind of similar to the weapon bunkers if you played in Chapter 5. Like, you needed to keep your guard up when you went to them. And I feel like the black markets are the same way. The biggest problem that I think a lot of people are going to encounter this season is fighting on top of mountains. And earlier I said there's a situation where the bat is like the greatest thing ever, and this is going to be it. If you're on a mountaintop fighting somebody, they can knock you off with the bat and just eliminate you to fall damage. So anytime you're fighting on a mountain, you need to be very aware of the risks associated with this. And ideally, it's just best to not fight on top of mountains at all. I know it's going to happen sometimes because of the way zones work, but if you can control it or limit the situations where you're fighting on top of mountains, I think that is a very good thing, because somebody can just easily knock you off with the bat, and then there goes your game. You can use a car to potentially avoid the fall damage, like just being near your car at all times. You can get in it, and then you might take damage still from getting hit by the bat when you get in the car. Like, they can still hit you through the car, but taking that like 90 damage is much better than taking 90 and dying to fall. So having a car around you anytime you are fighting on a mountain can definitely help reduce the amount of times you're just straight losing to the fall damage. Also, the Sub-Zero gauntlets can be used to negate fall damage. If you activate the slide effect of these gauntlets while you're in air, the Sub-Zero gauntlets can actually, you're immune to fall damage when you do that slide. So if you really, really hate losing to fall damage, carrying the Sub-Zero gauntlets just for that situation could be something that really helps you a lot. And like I said earlier, if you're forcing the bat in every situation, that's not good. But on top of mountains, it can just straight get you the elimination. A lot of players panic when they're fighting bat users, and I think this is another mistake that is unfortunate. Like, I'm not a fan of melee weapons being in the game. I get that it's annoying, but trying to stay calm and play the fight properly still versus bat users is going to be your best bet. If you're just scared when you see somebody using a bat and you don't really know how to play against it, you're just automatically probably going to be at a disadvantage in that fight. So trying to stay calm versus the bat users can go a long way. Like I said, using mobility to reposition, using cars to potentially avoid the fall damage. These are all things that you need to think about. And if somebody is just going for the regular melee attack of the bat, I've seen a lot of, like, ever since we've had these melee weapons with knockback, I've seen so much confusion in the community about what makes it good. I think the regular melee attack of these melee weapons is very bad and very easy to play against. The knockback effect is what makes it very good, because your character just gets knocked around and there's not much you can do about it. And then you potentially lose to fall damage in some cases as well. So the regular melee is very easy to play against. I'll get to that in a moment. The knockback effect is what's very problematic. So if you are fighting against somebody using the regular melee attack and they're just trying to spam that, what you want to do is just stand still and shoot your spray weapon at them. And I know this sounds very dumb, and this is why I was saying you need to not panic. But for whatever reason with these melee weapons, when you move around, you get knocked around more by the regular melee. The charge will knock you back regardless. But if they're just spamming the regular melee, just standing still and shooting your spray weapon is an easy way to get eliminations on them. And this is where I think the confusion comes in with people discussing these melee weapons, is that people don't play against people using the knockback charge as well, and then assume that the melee weapon is no big deal and people are just complaining. But playing against a player that uses those knockbacks well, I think is pretty difficult. The regular melee, no big deal. Just stand there, spray them. You'll get the elimination. you do need to be kind of mindful of like what situations would be good to do this, because if you're standing on a mountain, obviously you don't want to do that. But if you're able to get a bat user to like chase you into a house or a area where you're not going to get knocked around that much, that's going to be the best time to just stand still and spray them and just clean that kill up for free and make them look silly. So that's one of the easiest ways to deal with these melee weapons, is force them to fight you indoors and then just stand there and spray them. Not taking advantage of the sprite shrines is another huge mistake this season. I'm someone who completely ignored them last season, but this season, with the way the mobility works out, I think shockwaves are very important, and having shockwaves is very important. And so if you turn the air sprite into the sprite shrine, you get 4 shockwaves guaranteed. So whenever you're in a situation where you have no shockwaves or you're low on shockwaves, using the sprite shrine to get more is something that can have a very, very large impact on your game, because obviously running out of mobility is going to really limit how you can play the game and limit your ability to, you know, escape bad situations. So I would highly recommend taking advantage of those sprite shrines. Another common mistake a lot of people make is that they try to rush the vaults down. So they land at the vault POI, they want to open the vault, and then they just land and immediately start doing that. We've had some seasons with vaults where like you could kind of rush the boss, loot the vault, and then quickly get out of there before anyone notices. But the way these vaults work, where there's different stages of it, even if you eliminate the guards very quickly and damage the pieces of the vault very quickly, it still takes a decent amount of time to open, to the point where I would recommend clearing your POI out, or at least clearing a decent amount of it out. Like I wouldn't want to land at a hot POI and immediately go for the vault, but if it looked like kind of mid-ish contested and I killed 2 or 3 enemies already and it doesn't seem like there's much else going on, that's when I would kind of go for the vault. Obviously, you know, you need to stay on guard because some people may be like sneaking or third parties will pull up. But either way, go for the vault when the POI is more dead rather than when it is very populated, because you're not going to open it that fast regardless with how these vaults work. Chapter 4, Season 4, you could definitely just, you know, grab the vault and go very quickly. But that's not how this season works. Not having visual audio on, I think, would be another mistake for this season. This is something that's very basic and consistent within Fortnite. There's the visualize sound effect option in the audio settings, and this gives you like the little footstep indicators for enemies. And this is always useful, but it's especially useful in a season like this where there's a lot of music playing. Like if you're going for the vaults and there's just a lot of music playing, you're not going to be able to hear enemies as well. So having visual audio on, I think, can definitely help increase your awareness in those situations. Obviously, people can sneak and crouch walk and then they won't show, but this is just like a little added benefit. So I would highly recommend turning on visual audio if you haven't this season. And then the final thing I want to talk about is going to be the Falcon Scout Sniper. I think that's what it's called. I don't really use this, but if you do like carrying this sniper, it can grief cars decently well. So I'm not sure if you guys have played against this, but when you're in a car and it gets hit by the sniper, the car like basically stops, it gets knocked around, and the sniper also does a lot of damage to the car. So if you're carrying the sniper in your inventory already, or you're playing squads and one of your teammates is, getting them to grief the cars can really help, because you break it, you know, very easily, and then you can just swap to your AR and get those finishing blows on it and blow up and damage the enemy. And then also their car getting knocked around makes it harder for them to escape. So I wouldn't carry the sniper specifically for this season, but if you're using it anyways and you enjoy using it anyways, taking advantage of the car griefing abilities of it, I think is definitely something that can really help you out. But that is going to be it for this video. As always, if you guys did find this to be helpful, informative, interesting, remember to give it a like, subscribe if you like some more, comment down below what your biggest mistake is this season, and I will see you guys in the next one. Thanks for watching.